my name is Bridger Fates, and welcome to Master Stockman Consulting's educational video series on business power tools for agriculture. You know, in ag, we use a lot of tools, and we're used to using a lot of tools. It could be as simple a tool as this T-post, or maybe as useful a tool as this bell wagon. But today, we're really going to focus on business tools for agriculture. You know, whether you're raising chickens and maybe selling some eggs at the local farmer's market, or even selling produce from your garden, or you could be producing livestock. These tools will help you get you on the road to a profitable and sustainable ag business. We have 7 videos in this series that'll help you. The first video is basic farm and ranch economics. Then we have business tools for agriculture, then using the Wyoming Ranch Tools site. Then we have record keeping for ag. Then we have getting started in agriculture. And then we finish up with implementing the scientific process and implementing ag research. These videos are made possible through funding from Western SARE, and we appreciate their support. And in this video, Hudson Hill is going to talk to us about record keeping for ag.
So thanks, Bridger, for that introduction. As Bridger mentioned, my name is Hudson Hill, and I really get to share one of my favorite presentations with you today. We'll be talking about records, and especially records for an ag operation. And before you say, oh, that's going to be boring and people don't want to talk about that, which I would kind of agree with, let's look at my next slide and talk about why this is pretty interesting to talk about. The thing that we're really going to get to in our presentation today is how to mix the financial portion of your records and the production portion of your records. If you take either one of those records by itself, it's a lot of busy work. It's a lot of writing stuff down. It's a lot of columns and keeping track of stuff, which, you know, people in agriculture don't always love. But when we start mixing, you know, how much things cost and how much, you know, each acre of land or each barrel of mint oil or each egg or each pound of beef is making us, and how successful we can be financially, it can get really interesting and pretty exciting. So we're also going to talk about where are we right now. The most important thing about records is really deciding what interests you. And a big part of that is, what do you need to know and what do you need to keep track of to be successful? So what are you doing? And this can be applied to, you know, 5 chickens in the backyard, 1,000 head of cows, 600 acres of hay, you know, growing 20 tomato plants for the farmer's market. It just doesn't matter the size or what we're doing. It can be applied anywhere. And then the real question that we'll get to is, what do you want to be doing? Do you want to do this full time? Do you want to do this part time? What do we really need to be financially successful enough to do this all the time? The question we don't ever want to ask ourselves, as I switch gears a little bit here, the question we don't ever want to ask ourselves is, how did this happen? We don't ever want to look back and say, why am I broke? Why am I having to sell? Why am I not doing well enough? Because we don't ever want to say, how did this happen? And so here's some examples of that. We can look at the semi truck and the truck hanging over the edge there, the little red car and the other car. In each one of these cases, you can imagine driving up on it or walking up on it, or somebody walked up on it and saying, I wonder how that happened. And so as we talk about the real basics, we're not going to take a lot of time, but as we talk about the real basics of doing record keeping, record keeping, especially for ag operations, hopefully we'll never have to walk up on one of our situations and say, well, how in the heck did that happen? So in your mind, answer the question, why do you keep records? We keep records for a lot of reasons. We've all, you know, have to balance our bank accounts and not bounce checks. We need to keep track of things and pay our bills. Certainly I don't want to be blamed for this one, but we all at some point in time will have to do our taxes and pay taxes in some way, shape, or form. And if we do things right, record keeping can really help us there. a lot of times with government programs and with loans, if we have good records, the banker's a lot more willing to help us get a loan to build our business or make our business bigger. And then in the form of going out and working with some of the government programs, if we have good records, we're a lot further ahead in being able to take advantage of some of the programs and risk management programs that's out there for ag producers. But the main reason that I've talked with people over the last 30 years about keeping records is to manage our ag production businesses, farm management. We want to be able to make decisions, and we're doing some really neat programming right now with some young entrepreneurs and some young growers about how do you make decisions in your business, and certainly these videos are going to talk about the Wyoming Ranch tools and a lot of what we've got going on there, and then planning for the future. And in order to plan for the future, we really need to know how successful we're being today. So as I go to my next slide, it's really simple, and it seems a little boring, but it's pretty easy, right? Just to keep some records. We get receipts. That might be a check written or a receipt from what we purchased. We write down the transaction. We put everything into a monthly ledger. We look at what our farm profit is, and then we're going to analyze that. And so as we look at this goes from receipts of just writing a check to analyze of, did we make money? Did we make money feeding those cows for 100 days? Or did we make money gathering eggs from a dozen chickens every day? Did we make money buying 100 tomato plants and selling tomatoes at the farmer market? We really can analyze that if we have the information here that we need. So there's some methods here. I've been doing this presentation for a long time. Very few people are doing records that is on anything other than the computer. But back when I was your guys' age, there was a lot of people keeping the records by hand. A lot of people had accountants that worked for them. Over the years, you've seen more and more and more, and almost everybody has some kind of a computer program, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet they built or one of the Microsoft products to keep track of their records on the computer. Most people are using the computer now, and I would certainly say that the computer allows you to do some things that are pretty neat if you learn how to do it or have somebody that knows how to do it. So one thing I really encourage producers and everybody to think about. I mean, you could keep records just in your household and answer some questions. I mean, you can do a budget on gasoline or how many times you go out to the movie each month or food. But I really encourage people before they start keeping records is to decide what they want to keep track of. So let's say you're trying to sell some locally raised eggs, some brown eggs out of the backyard from a really small flock of chickens. Well, what's the most important thing that you'd want to keep track of in that? It's probably feed, right? And so in that case, you'd really want to be able to say, okay, what are my feed costs per egg, or what are my feed costs per chicken, or per day, or per month, or whatever that is, so that you really know how many eggs you need to start producing and how much you need to charge for those eggs in order to be able to pay for the other things, keep a coop and a feeder and, replace your chickens every 18 months and some things like that. So I have a quote from Einstein here: everything that can be counted doesn't necessarily count, and everything that counts cannot necessarily be counted. So all that really means is you decide what needs to be counted and keep track of it so you can do it. Really try to answer the question before you get started: what do you want to do with the records? If you're not going to do them, it's probably a waste of time for you. So don't if you're not going to use them, don't do them. And then again, this fourth little segment down here, at the end of the day, what we're really headed for is being able to mix our financial records and come up with some production records so that we can start making decisions and see how much stuff costs. So the first simplest way to see what things are costing us is a unit cost of production. And that's really simple because a unit cost of production is simply how much something cost over how much produced. In this example, we're basically talking a herd of lambs or cattle. And so what was the herd's total cost? So we put all the costs into that. Mortgages, gas, feed, labor, and all those things that go into to raising a lamb or a beef. And then underneath that, we'd say, well, we sold 10 head of beef at 600 head. That's 6,000 pounds. So unit cost of production is pretty easy to come up with as a starting point here. As we move on, there's lots of things as we look at a herd of animals, a flock of animals or whatever, that we can really start saying, where's it costing us money? Where can we save money? And most important, where can we increase production? When we look at making money in agriculture, we usually don't have a say on how much we get to sell for. We usually don't get to make our price mark. We usually have to sell for what the market's saying and what people are willing to pay for it. But something we can do quite often is produce more. And if we can do that economically, we can produce more. But then what we can also do quite often is produce for less. And if we know what we're producing and how much it's costing us, we can really think about those things. So here's an example of a herd of cows. And here's some things to think of. What do you want to know in a herd of cows? You have one cow who has a calf every year. So what's the important things to think about there? Well, we want to know pregnancy rate. We want to know calf survival rate. We want to know a weaning rate. We want to know cow reproductive rate, right? And so here's a really simple example of how we would start keeping track of that. Now, I probably didn't mention it, and I should have. I've moved from financial records into production records. I'm going to go back a slide. See, I moved from financial at a unit cost of production, and then I'm going to move into the production part of agriculture, because we're talking about, and you can see here, there's two really critical times to keep track of a herd of cows. When the cows go out with the bulls, females exposed to a bull, and then how many animals we have on January 1st. And why is that so critical? Because we know that we expose so many females to a bull, so we actually know our reproduction rate. How many cows didn't get pregnant? And the reason we want to know that is because it costs us a lot of money to go through cows that aren't getting pregnant, because the whole point of having cows is to have a calf every year. So we go through this little thing. We want to know females exposed, females that are bred. How many cows and heifer calves do we have on January 1st? How many of those cows and heifer calves had a live calf? And then how many calves weaned? Think about those two things right there. How many live calves were born? And then how many did we wean? We might be losing a whole bunch of calves to summer fever or to predators up on forest or, during the summer. And if we are, we want to know those things. And then the last thing on December 31st, cows and heifer, cull cows that needed to be replaced. So, these things are pretty easy. You just kind of have to do it each year. And there's some real power if you do it each year. I'm going to talk about trend analysis here in a minute, but there's some real power if you just kind of do the same thing year in, year out and have some numbers to follow there. So we talked about the unit cost of production. This is kind of what it might look like. We go through, and it doesn't matter how many animals you have or how many acres you have, it would look like this. This is for animals. We'd keep track of feed costs, livestock costs. In that livestock costs, there'd probably be fuel. tools, machinery, fencing supplies, stuff like that, some overhead, and then we're going to keep track of gross income. So we've got our total costs here at 80,000, our gross income of 106,000. So return to unpaid operator here, you know, we're looking at $26,000. That's after we paid some labor and stuff. So we do the math and we can come up with a total per cow. And we can do some more math and keep moving to the right here. We can come up with a total per cubic weight. So if our total per cow is $321 of feed costs, we're putting $61 into every steer calf that we had to sell. We're putting livestock costs $26, $5 worth of overhead, $123 for gross income, minus our total costs. We're making $29 per head. But the important thing to look at there is what's our unit cost of production. Our unit cost of production is $93 a hundredweight, $93.85. And so with that, we can step back and say, well, if we come up with a better reproduction rate, or if we wean more calves, or if we wean bigger calves, what'll that do to our numbers? And we can start looking at that saying, that'd be great. If we weaned a 100-pound bigger calf, boy, look how much more money we can make. And then the question we really get to when we mix financial and production records is, if we do start weaning a 100-pound bigger calf, what's it going to cost us? Because there's probably going to be some costs associated with that. I'm going pretty fast. I think you can always come back and look at this slide, but a unit cost of production is a great place to start. And it really makes sense to start looking at some things and breaking some things out into feed costs, livestock costs, and you might even want to break, livestock costs out a little more than that. Keep track of, maybe how much equipment's costing us, or gas and diesel's costing us, or something like that. So I'll move another slide forward. And I mentioned trend analysis a minute ago, but trend analysis is so important because you can look at, go from year to year, 2020 to 2021 to 2022 to 2023, and keep track of stuff like that. Feed's usually our biggest cost in livestock production, and so we can say, okay, so in 2020 it cost us 25 cents a week per chicken for feed, or 25 cents a day per chicken for feed, or $2 a day for a cow, or whatever that is. In 2021, that 25 cents a day for a chicken went up to 50 cents a day for a chicken. And we need to ask ourselves, why did that happen? Why did it go from 25 cents to 20 cents? Well, it did because corn goes up and feed prices go up and those other things happen. But when we have that trend, what direction are we trending in gives us a lot of power to see what's happening. A lot of times we'll start seeing vet costs trend up and start moving up. Something that's happened real recently is feed costs have certainly trended up, from 2020 to 2022. We just watched our feed costs inch up in everything, not just any certain enterprise. We're really seeing equipment costs trend up right now, and land prices trend up. Labor costs are trending up. But are they going to trend back down? If they're not trending back down, how do we make decisions based on those things? So trend analysis is really, really gives us the opportunity to plan. So I promised you right up front that the reason that this was going to be exciting to talk about is we go from keeping records to using some ag business tools. All these videos have talked a lot about the Wyoming Ranch Tools site, being able to use some of these tools to look at, to make some cold, hard decisions. This presentation is not any different. It's once we have some records, once we know how much it costs us, to feed a chicken every week and how many eggs that chicken's going to give us, we can do some interesting things to say, well, we should get more chickens or less chickens, or not do chickens anymore. So your assignment today is going to be to do a partial budget with some records. That information's here. I think it'll be a really interesting partial budget for you. We're gonna look at some doing a small flock of birds in your backyard and how that might work from a business standpoint. So it's been really interesting today to talk to you about record keeping. It's certainly an important part of any business. You know, it's interesting to think about businesses that aren't ag related. You can go into major stores and they can show you a Snickers bar on the shelf sitting there. And they know everything about it. They know how it got there. They know what day it got there. They know exactly how much it cost them. They know exactly how much it costs for them to set it on the shelf. And they know how long it's going to sit on the shelf before somebody picks it up and buys it and walks out of the store with them. And those businesses are successful because they have that kind of outlook on what their business is doing. And there's no reason that in production ag we can't do really similar things and really have a feeling for what's going on in our businesses, what's costing us money and what's making us money. So again, my name's Hudson Hill, and we've really enjoyed making these videos and providing these videos for Utah FFA.